we're going to do now is make a planing board. So this is a great jig tool to have around the shop, especially if you're not sure your bench is flat or you know your bench isn't flat. Because you can grab a nice piece of Baltic birch plywood, preferably 3/4 of an inch. I happen to only have a 1/2 inch here in the shop right now, so I'll use the 1/2 inch, but my regular one's 3/4 of an inch thick. You're going to need one long stop or piece to attach to the side of the board that is the length of your vise, so that you can attach that into the vise. With the vise, this attached to the top so the board won't go anywhere. And then 2 significantly thinner cleats or stops. And why 2? Well, you need one for the front and one for the side if you're going to be working on large panels or anything wider than 3 or 4 inches that may end up one planing on the outside of it, and 2 when you plane moving pressure in this direction so that the board may move. So this will help the boards from moving. And you'll need some screws and a screwdriver for attaching this cleat. And for these guys, I like to glue them down and maybe put some plugs in, and that's about it. No screws here. And the reason why you don't want any screws here is just in case for some reason you tilt your plane over or you're planing a very thin piece. The last thing you want to do is have your blade go right into a screw. How big of a piece of plywood do you need? Well, you need something that's wide enough to plane your total width of the pieces, whatever that may be. For us, it's going to be the panels, and our panels are just under 12 inches, so we'll need enough room for the panel plus the stop on the end. And as far as the length, how much length do you need? Well, whatever the longest piece you're going to be planing is. And for us, that's going to be the front legs without any other support. The rear legs, will clean those up again, but those will have support with the cutoffs, and those will help us support the legs and plane those. But otherwise, the longest piece that we have is the legs, and after the front legs, the front apron. The first thing you need to do is measure the width of your little cleat here. Take that width and divide it by 2. Once you've divided that width by 2, and for me that's just a little bit over a 1/2 inch, it may be different for you, I'm going to come in here and make a pencil mark that's roughly the length of the piece. With that pencil mark there, that'll help me guide where I want to place my screws. I'll take my piece of plywood, preferably Baltic birch plywood, and affix that or line it up to my piece. And I see I'm a little short with my line. Just extend that a little bit. Now I have a pencil line that's the same length. And I'm going to come in, let's say, 3/4 of an inch for my first hole. Another 3/4 of an inch there. Just want to evenly space these, or at least get them spaced out enough that you're providing some real good holding power throughout the entire length of the connection between the board and the plywood. And maybe another one here in the middle. Great. So I've laid out 5 different locations for my screws. I'm going to drill a hole in for my first screw. I have my drill here with a piece of blue tape marking the total length I want to drill down. And that includes the distance from the top through, as well as how much I want to countersink this screw. So I just have everything lined up. I'm just going to do this by hand. Oops. Got to make sure the drill's tight, the chuck is nice and tight. Okay. And we're going to countersink this. Great. Now I like using square drive bits, or screws that is. So I'm going to take a square drive screw. Okay, perfect. 5 more to go. Next, I'm going to take a little bit of glue and apply some glue to the bottom. I'm just going to glue the top one first. I'll glue the other board in a minute. Get the two of these guys aligned. Grab a clamping caul. Make a little pencil mark for myself so I don't forget where the edge should be. And we'll clamp these down. Okay, I'm going to do this other side now too. I cleaned up all the squeeze out, everything's clamped up, the front stop as well as the side, and we're just going to let this thing dry for a while. The last thing you want to do is push it. You don't want to have to be planing against this front stop, and which is a lot of pressure. Remember, the stop is holding back you, the plane, all that forward momentum, and that momentum's got to go somewhere. So just let this dry, and maybe even overnight would be great. Set it aside, work on other parts of the chair, and come back to it tomorrow and it'll be ready to go.